and it's be about that HTML might be all what you need. So, a few words about me. Currently, I'm a co-founder of Quesma. We are doing database gateway, and we are like a very early startup which raised recently $2.5 million funding based here in Warsaw, Poland. Previously, I worked 10 years at SomoLogic, which is like observability solution. And I lived years in California and moved here, open office of IT. The company managed to IPO, and even after the market crash, it was still acquired for a sizable amount. And I also was lucky to play with NVIDIA CUDA and work at Facebook before it was cool. And just disclaimer, all of the AI images after that are generated by AI. So thank you, LMs. So one of my core beliefs as like engineer, that every engineer, like a software engineer, should be able to do frontend. Like frontend is not like some specialty, like I know, like some niche security. No, it's like basic of interactions. Like even if you're a database if you're doing databases, even if you're doing QA, it's like a superpower that you could write some simple UI tool that is through the interaction, and you could like automate and do very interesting stuff. And it's not like just for specialized, everybody could do it. And people got a lot of ideas how to do frontend. Initially it was like some C code, command line, things like that. But even though many of the GUI technology poured a lot of money to it, like Windows forms of like a Java applets, eventually what won was like a simple hack. Some bored guy at like a CERN reactor thought it would be easier to write this like a HTML tags, and eventually that won. And today, how I feel about all of this stuff is that today it doesn't feel that it's easier to write front application than it was in late 90s with some PHP stack. Today you have like a React, you have Angular, you have like a Webpack, then you're doing transpiling, and you have to do quite a lot of stuff just to have like even like a simple website. So I was thinking what's the best analogy. I think it's more like a fashion. We like new frameworks. There's like even within new frameworks like React, they introduces hooks, things are changing, there's a lot of tools, dependencies. It's like very quickly changing, and for some people that's what I'm doing for life, that may be good. And there's like general consensus, oh, you should use JavaScript, TypeScript everywhere, but that comes with its own complexity. But for a lot of other people, maybe you don't want to redo your skills every year. Maybe you are, in fact, frontend is one of your 10 skills that you want to maintain. So what's the equivalent of like a timeless clothes? Like, how can we reduce this complexity? And even in original documentation of like a HTML and CSS by W3, there is like a principle of rule of least power. Yes, you can use very powerful technology to do that, but if there is like a simple way of achieving that, maybe you shouldn't. So what's the problem? Why can we write like a modern application is HTML? Because HTML was designed, when computers were really slow. So in fact, the HTTP request was considering very heavy. So just 2 elements could do them, and they could just do them when you click or submit. There was no like if you check box or if you hover over. There's like just 2 methods, and anytime you do that, you pretty much have to reload the whole page. While like modern applications, they are much more interactive. It's more like application than like loading of the whole page. So instead of inventing virtual DOMs, a lot of components, why doesn't focus just to remove those limitations within HTML? So let me give you a demo. Let's say you have like a form that you want to make editable, and you are just when you click, you want to change it to editable, you want to make a few changes, and then you want to click submit. Okay, that should be very easy. In React, that's already very heavy setup, but with HTMX, what you only need to just use like a vanilla HTML. You just add 3 attributes that if you click this button, what you do, you issue HTTP GET. You don't reload page, you just issue GET. And this is like HX GET. Then above that, you decide that you replace all of that component what was response from HT GET. So in fact, the server, when you issue those HT GET requests, return this HTML, which is also very standard HTML, which got in one button like a method okay, if I'm canceling, in fact, I won't get back my previous form, but if I'm submitting edit, I don't want to reload page, I just want to submit this thing to this URL using post method, and then replace this form with what was written. So this is like very simple, very similar to HTML. Like if you have questions, I'm happy to also like do inline question in the presentation. And how does it work? You know, behind the work, of course, is JavaScript. Of course, there is like JavaScript that extending HTML across, but it's just like 15 kilobyte zipped and minified JavaScript. There is no coding in JavaScript. All what was happening was just like server-side HTML with some minor extension. And what's interesting with that is like quite a lot of features of like Ajax, like asynchronous requests, reloading part of the website, transitions, or even notification from server that you could just implement with those extra attributes. So, I believe some of you may hear a lot of objections. Oh, but this is like a simple trick just to do one application. I know, like anytime I will do some modern application, it won't work. But actually, people using this very simple framework are able to write quite a lot of applications, including chat application, including ones that people are like have collaborative features. You can do granular update, so if you have counter in different places than this block that you are replacing, you can do this too. You can customize it because it's small and simple, it's very easy to add some extra logic or even JavaScript for visualization if you need it, and ready for production. So let you give me like a demo. This is like our from our startup, from our real work, that it's like I would try to do live demo. That's actually possible to take advantage of that. So what we are doing as a Quesma is like a database proxy. So these are some internal UI that you see. Okay, here is like, you know, what we are showing with errors. And of course I can do some drill downs, okay, with errors. Have like this interactive UI. It's all in HTMX. But let me go back what this UI is doing. What we are doing as a company, we are implementing database proxy. So if you're using, let's say, Kibana, you can do all sorts of aggregation, searches, but behind the scene, our proxy is translating those JavaScript requests to SQL, like that. And as you mentioned, this website was interactive, so if we go back and issue some query, let's say REST password, we can actually see that without any refresh, I'm getting like a new query which is like reset password. I can do scrolling even on the live, and it's all in HTMX. So for example, here I'm seeing that, or maybe when I go like that, I can see that here I'm generating SQL and mapping those JSON. And these are internal application. We are also able to implement, okay, this is like really bad resolution, sorry about that, live dashboard for that's automatically refreshing. We have like ingest features that if you look here, the counter is increasing. And though we are replacing it, it works. So, you know, these are like, I would rather say admin interface, but you know, it's possible to use HTMX for things that traditionally people thought that you need to use Angular or React. So let's maybe get back to presentation. Let's go. So why I think this is great? First thing is, you know, I believe there is like a power if you do something that one person, you can use one programming language and implement application end to end. And traditionally, because frontend was in JavaScript or TypeScript, you have to use TypeScript on backend. Where for a lot of people, oh, I prefer to use Java, Ruby, Go, .NET, or quite a few languages. And with this approach, no problem, just use any language that works for you, you can add it. Also, like the amount of things you need to learn to do this No, in fact, you just need to return some HTML, which is probably any programming language most of the frameworks will do. Maybe the only caveat other than adding string is like, still don't forget about security. Like, you know, it's string concatenation, but anytime you get unsanitized user input, you need to have like some library, or like most of the templating library, they will like escape, so people won't add like a script or something that will do cross-site scripting in your application. You get like a very performant application because it's just one HTML, one view. So this application loads very fast on every device. Even if somebody got like a really old Android, still they work much faster with a lot of like this reactive website. It's very easy to learn this framework, so if you are not front-end developer, I highly recommend you. As I tell you before, you know, since it's small, it's very easy to mix with other approaches. So, okay, now I was promising it's going to be easy to learn. So let me teach you or show all of the major things with HTMX on single slide. You know, the basic premise of that is like you have like two methods that let you issue HTTP requests, and there's of course more of them, but I'm focusing on pretty much if you have that majority of HTMX users just using these attributes that are issuing. Where do you issue get post requests? Sometimes when you get those response back, you could issue in this tag or like in container tag, what should be the target? Which block are you replacing? This is like, you know, I would say three most frequently used attributes. Other than that, sometimes you also want other triggers. So sometimes like, you know, if you checkbox things or if you hover over on something, you could change the behavior of event triggers. That's also like you can do this. And the third thing starts to get a little bit trickier because swap is like if you swap inner or outer HTML is pretty minor. But one thing that people don't realize, okay, but how I implement, I have like a counter on my pages, a completely different place. How can I do that? There is something called like HTMX OOB, so out of bound replaces. So you could return something, and if you mark with this tag, it will be even replaced in the other place of the website. So kind of like counter. Sometimes also like people get like objections, okay, but this is very expensive, and now I need to add 10 times more HTTP endpoints because now you want me to return different things from different parts of the website. HSelect lets you, okay, out of the response, actually drop some part of the response and pick them. There's also like one way to implement push history, and HA-vals for passing additional parameters. And there's also like a really nice sandbox. So if you have your phone, or if you later want to do that, there's like very simple website. I'm not going to duplicate that, but they have something called examples. And there are like plenty of examples how you can use, like click to edit, which I was showing before. There's also like behind the scene request. There are things like, you know, okay, I really like infinity scroll. People say, okay, it's impossible. No, actually, that amount of code you need to implement infinite scroll, which, you know, works. And trick here was like, oh, I change my XH trigger to reveal. So if I'm scrolling to bottom, then I'm doing get, and as a swap method, I'm not replacing anything. I'm just adding new elements, free attributes, and you could implement infinite scroll. Maybe I would take one thing for audience. Do you think there is something that HTMX can't do, or like, you know, and it's typical in frontend? Happy like to demo.
Some more complex components, like, I don't know, maybe calendar or
Calendar? Okay, calendar, great question. Let's leave it. It's on one of the next slides. How to do calendar. Anything else?
Something with animations, like fluent changing from previous to next.
Yeah, so I would argue these days, previously you cannot do that. You would use CSS. So these two examples are actually on the next page. So like you're getting my slide. Let me go there. So, you know, actually HTML got better. And actually, all modern browsers these days support input type calendar. So it used that you need this component to have like a data picker, but today I'm arguing like you could just use HTML without the HTMX and get data picker. Right? That's the first question. Second, like animations, same story. It used to be that the only way of doing any reasonable animation was using JavaScript with some timer magic. Today you have like a CSS transitions. So you can do this CSS transitions, and because browser got better, you can animate a lot of things, right? So maybe let's go into live demo, since you know that was the question. Maybe animations would be nicer to show. Yeah, there's animations. Okay, and you know, you go and you know you can swap it, right? Like a color swap. If you go there, it will swap color to something else, right? There's like delete me, slowly fading. The way how it works, there is like in this HT swap method. In fact, what you do, you invoke CSS transition, and in CSS you could specify whether you would fade or you would do something else, like fade me. But that actually was not possible just to HTML, it was just possible because CSS standard got way better. I would say another thing that make it possible, other than advancement of the browser, that these days servers are really powerful. So we would have like a cloud functions, lambda functions, functions on edge. So these days, I less believe that with assumption of a lot of this React, servers are slow, so let's do things in front. Actually, you could push computation very close to the user, and you have like a way more control over the cloud environment than was your final end user device. So I believe we should like go back to our tradition, to HTML, like you know, because that's like just simple. I can leave some time at the end for more things, but I'm still warning you about a few things that, you know, this technology, as with all of the front-end technology, don't just allow anybody to post string on their website. It's very simple. It's the same as like databases don't allow any string there, but the implications are very bad because anytime you can do string, you could do script something, and then the script something could steal your cookie or issue some request with your permission. So still with this, you need to sanitize your string. I showed previously that you can just use like a buffer, but templating languages like Jinja and Python are still like a good solution for that. Still, you need to update as little as possible. You know, even if with templates, there is extensions that are doing something similar to virtual DOM like Alpine Morph. And I was showing something that is like more backend environment, so we did not spend much effort on UX on CSS. But you know, you need that. Like, you know, if you're doing consumer app or something that your website, no, the fact that you're using different frameworks, a lot of JavaScript frameworks came with very good design, and you know, you need to invest in that to have like a nice looking app. But I would argue nice design is not property of React or Angular. It's more property, okay, what's your UX, what's your CSS, and you could copy a lot of components from standard library with CSS. So a few things I'm just telling, like you cannot do, 3 things that you cannot do. If you're very passionate about React Angular, I personally hate like religious wars and kind of like that. And you know, people in technology sometimes are dogmatic, and if they really like those technologies that they bread and butter, I would say just keep using what you like. Like, you know, there is no, I have like no intention of convincing anybody, okay, drop technology that you are passionate just for the sake of changing it. HTMX philosophy is completely different. It's for the people who like doing stuff, they're pragmatic, and they don't have preferences. Second, I believe this technology is really bad fit if you want any kind of offline support. Like if you want web workers, think that, you know, suppose like a Gmail work for a little bit offline, no chance of getting it working. And the third thing, which I believe, you know, it's very tricky if you have very interactive game, not kind of like a poker game, but I would say, the game when you're shooting something, things like that. No, like with server side, you know, if you require like a dozen millisecond interaction, that's not going to play out. So these 3 things, I would say for sure you cannot make this work. Yeah, that's all. I think that's the last talk, so I don't want to do that, but I'm happy to take questions and show more of the demos and be challenged about any of your programs. So this is like kind of like getting back to the roots. Let's embrace the tradition and go back to hypertext. Thank you.
So if you want to challenge maybe some more interactive component like a map, for example?
Yeah. So like a map, I would generally say that, okay, just embed in JavaScript, but here with map, I would still argue that the map is fitting the case. Sometimes state change is very quick, right? So it's possible, but to be fair, I would say like map just implement with canvas, with map you need very smooth interaction. I would say, but today like still you can use HTMX for rest of the website and embed Google Maps, that's perfectly fine. But it's not, you are not going to just use with maps completely HTMX.
So that was going to be my next question, that you can mix different approaches on the same website, right?
Yeah.
So you can still have some JavaScript on the side for something a little bit more interactive.
And in fact, even though I'm not like a purist, even for my application, like in this Quesma, I was having like really hard time with scroll preservation. So if I'm updating component, I want to preserve with scroll components, and I was really specific how this works. I wrote like a little JavaScript for that, right? Because there was like two places where I need to write JavaScript. Maybe let me show one thing that's like a little bit broken because of the resolution, but let me show you anyway. So one thing like here, I want not just stop auto refresh, I want also to stop this animation. And this apparently needed like a tiny, like a few lines of JavaScript. Same thing like here, I want to sometimes, even when I'm updating this field, I want to preserve scroll position, which feels really bad if you don't, because it updates, it moves you. And it was still much easier just adding like very few lines of JavaScript, like a less than 20, or maybe like less than 50 for sure to do that. And with HTMX, I believe this is like completely approach. It's a little bit different than React. If you want some part not using that, you are more than welcomed. Any more questions or challenges? What can you not do in HTMX or? I will stay here, like if you want to come and have like in person, but that's it. Thank you.
What's the most impressive example of HTMX that you've seen out there?
I was recently like surprised because some people, like maybe, I was seeing not like maybe complete application that like impressed me a lot. They look like a normal application, but I was looking like yesterday, things like that. Oh, you can implement snake game with HTMX server side. And people say, oh, games are not possible, but actually they were. And actually, let me just even try to look it. People implemented like a snake, multiplier snake in HTMX. Yeah, they implemented a game like that.
Oh, nice.
And it worked completely server side, even in the multiplayer mode. And if you're not on different continent, you don't feel latency about this game in particular. You're not going to do that with a lot of other games like throwing balls because the latency of server might kill you. Okay. So, thank you.
Sure.